Welcome to How I Met My Broker by Strategic Brokers, where we uncover the stories, strategies and insights of individuals who've built significant wealth through smart leverage. Get ready to learn, be inspired and take your property game to the next level.
Well, g'day everyone, it's Liam Garman here, editor of Smart Property Investment, back with another episode of the How I Met My Broker podcast with my co-host, as always, Hung Chuy, director of Strategic Brokers. Mate, busy Christmas period for you?
Oh, mate, very, very busy. We've trying to wrap up for the year, but clients keep reaching in and a lot of questions, a lot changing in the landscape of lending as such. So everyone's coming in all at the same time, trying to figure out the solutions. So very, very busy Christmas for us.
Yeah, which is good. And if anyone listening to this podcast has any questions, reach out to Hung or the team and they'll be more than happy to help you, or reach out to myself. My contact details are all over the website and I'll make sure that you get passed on to the team at Strategic Brokers. But back by popular demand, we have Sam Gordon, director of Australian Property Scout, all the way from the GC. When did you come down?
Boys, it's good to be back. Mate, got in late last night, and then, yeah, nice and fresh in this morning, man. So yeah, looking forward to recording with you boys today.
No rest for the wicked.
Mate, never, man, never. Same as Hung, like we've been chatting off air a little bit lately, man. It's full steam ahead all the way into Christmas, man. It was the same with both of our teams. So it's exciting times, man. Like Hung said, there's some changes out there in the marketplace right now, but change is always opportunity for the right people, man. So now we're loving it. It's good times.
And APS has had some pretty big growth looking back over 2024.
Yeah, 25 has been a big year. It's been a formative year. There's been a lot of things that have sort of happened and gone on. Yeah, man, it's been great. It's been great. So a lot of different things sort of been launched and successfully done so, and a lot of great property source, a lot of growth for clients as well. So it's awesome. We're really looking to spearhead into 2026 in a big way. So it's exciting, man. It's exciting times, that's for sure.
Well, you're in the AFR for some kind of recognition for some of the stuff you've been doing?
Yeah, man. I think the AFR's as a fourth year in a row, AFR Fast 100 company. And then I'm not sure. Yeah, and then I won the Entrepreneur of the Year. Right. That was last weekend as well, which was Business News Australia as well. So it's been a couple of wild years, man. But it was nice to that was sort of the last awards night of the year. So kind of get in the AFR, and they obviously did a spread on us in the AFR, and then to take home the award last weekend as well. That was it was cool, man. Out of 10 of my closest, well, there's 10 of us in total at the table, closest kind of APS crew. Yeah. So it was really cool to sort of take that award home, man, and celebrate the night.
Well, recognition for an amazing year at APS, and also recognition of Strategic Brokers and your continued growth. But today we're going to be unpacking something which I know a lot of our listeners are very interested in, and you both are going to have some pretty frank and fearless advice over the world of commercial property and how people can actually understand yields, tax benefits, vacancies and asset selection, because I think it's pretty fair to say that a lot of people get this pretty wrong. So you're going to be here to correct some of the narrative.
Yeah, so I don't know if they get it right or wrong. There's no real, fixed answer to this. I think when people look at commercial property, they're just looking at dollars, cents, figures. They're not looking deep enough. And if you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you're doing. And that can be a big problem, because looking at a resi property, for instance, you might only have to look at 10 different data points. Whereas when you look at a commercial property, there's hundreds of data points, so much information that needs to go into it. The due diligence is so important. So I think we find it really important about when to buy a commercial property and how that's going to affect your future portfolio. So that's what I really want to unpack today with Sam.
I think it's a good point to make as well, man. And it's like when is the right time to buy in there? But to touch on kind of the question you said a second ago as well, that it is a very easy asset class to get wrong. Yeah. So a lot of people, they kind of just go in and buy what's maybe on face value and not understand the deeper details that Hung sort of touched on there too. So there's a lot around due diligence and then really understanding the product in the market that you're in, and not just having a blanket approach to, oh yeah, well, it produces this. There's so many different things to overlay. And the really tricky part of commercial world versus residential is there's so much less data available to actually be able to assess. So in a residential market, there's so much available data to be able to very easily crunch things like vacancy rates, even stock levels, incoming supply levels, all that sort of thing. Whereas in commercial, because there's so much less stock available and the actual available data points are so tight, it's a lot harder to get that information to make educated decisions as well. And agents get paid on sales, right? So they're going to do the absolute best job to fugazi whatever they can on a deal.
Hey, there's our first fugazi.
Yeah, give the push up.
4 minutes in.
Yeah. to be able to push through a sale, right? So it's one of those things, man. If you don't know what you're doing, a lot of people want to start really early with it. or inject it in wherever it is in the portfolio. There's so many things to understand before you go pull the trigger on it.
Now, this is going to be, I'm going to throw this open to the floor for both of your insights, because you both come from unique, different perspectives, the broking side, the asset selection side as well. For yourself, Sam, you both, I'm going to guess, have a lot of clients coming through the door. They want to jump in too soon, or they don't truly understand at what point in their portfolio they should actually jump into commercial. Starting off with Hung, what do you see about some people, some of their misconceptions, some of the challenges they face along the way?
Yeah, so probably the biggest problem I see is some people going straight into commercial before they've even touched any resi properties, or, you know, have, I guess, enough assets or deposit to then be able to extend their portfolio out. That's probably the biggest thing I see. And they jump straight in and they just assume because they want passive income. But, you know, passive income will come. You need to build your wealth. You need to build as much core assets as you can. And buying a commercial isn't easy to re-leverage. Every time you want to, I guess, re-borrow, you have to pay for a valuation fee, for instance, it's a few $1,000s. And if that doesn't stack up, you have to go to someone else and get another valuation. So it's starting to cost you a lot of money to try and just move the deal. The loan to value ratios are typically lower as well. And, you know, the loan terms are shorter depending on where you're going to. So that will affect your overall ability to borrow then on the resi side, depending on who you go to and which broker you use. So there's so many elements of it that causes somebody not to be able to grow a substantial portfolio if it's, you know, just nailing down on one or two commercial properties, hoping for that future retirement plan. You can always come back and buy commercial at any point in time. I'm on the firm belief that you should build out a resi portfolio first. And then when you have the right tools and you have the right resources, then potentially looking at converting that into a cash flow play at some point. But I don't know if Sam has anything to add to that.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think it's a great point. It's so many people they get the stars in their eyes of the commercial asset. They get the cash flow. They think about that immediately. Oh, I want the cash flow. I want the cash flow. But the simple fact, and what Hung's getting at here is you need to drive and build that equity base first. And so the equity base is so important to be able to continue building the portfolio. And it's very, very unlikely you'll be able to go out and buy one commercial asset and then that asset will retire you. If anything, it will do almost always more harm than good, because you'll put it in the portfolio too soon, will hamper the growth. Like Hung's saying there, can't access equity, or a lot harder to access equity. It's a lot harder to keep scaling the portfolio in regards to, as opposed to doing it in reverse. So start with a resi portfolio, start to build that out aggressively. And then when the timing's right, you might inject a commercial deal or two in during the actual acquisition phase, but it might be a few or 5 or 10 deals into the portfolio, and then again it might be an injection on the back end of the portfolio. The biggest mistake we see is people come in, or they literally come to us and they've already bought one at the start, and they're like, well, what do I do now? And 9 times out of 10, they're actually stuck, and we might need to save up a complete deposit, which might take another couple of years, as opposed to if we did it in reverse and started building out the resi arm first, we can always come back, as Hung saying there, and inject it back in the portfolio years 2, 3, 4, something like that, as opposed to right at the start and stalling the journey. You're almost stalling the journey before you've even started if you start with something like a commercial to absolutely begin with.
So explain that from the broking perspective. So a lot of people have come in, they're probably over leveraged, they can't get serviceability. Talk us through why that stalls their accumulation journey.
Yeah, so the very clear first part is the loan to value ratios, right? So
capital you're putting into a deal.
Yeah, correct. So in a standard resi, let's put it out there, you can borrow up to 95% in some circumstances. If you have a guarantor, for instance, 100% plus costs, plus even buyer's agent fees with some lenders that people don't even know about, as long as you send an invoice out. So there's you could borrow the whole thing in the resi side, and if you get the capital growth on it, great. You can release the guarantee. That's another method. But in the commercial space, standard commercial lending is 65% OBR. There are some lenders out there who will go as aggressive as 90%, which I've been using a lot of, and that's a full doc basis. It has to be a standard commercial, has to be in a metro or sub-metro area. If the population is too low, they won't do the 90%, they'll bring it back. The thing about commercial lending is it's not like resi lending. Resi lending, it's almost like a fixed formula for each lender. They have an appetite, they have a set of criteria, and that's what you follow, and you can come outside of it a little bit, right? In the commercial space, there's no real fixed formula. They give you some guidelines, but depending on how strong the broker's relationship is with the bank or with the particular banker themselves, how big your relationship is also with that commercial banker, you can do basically anything. They can almost create a loan that doesn't exist, so it's not a very standard one size fits all box, but you can get quite creative in that space. But yeah, the limitation is obviously the loan to value ratio. And then obviously, if you wanted to buy more property, they're very restrictive of taking cash out, then extending the loans out. And especially with commercial bankers, they love to cross everything, right? So they want to build out a commercial property portfolio. Great. Every time you want to do something, you have to beg and plead them to do something because they're just going to whip everything together in order to then build it up. If you're self-employed, they'll whip your business in there too. Probably one thing I wanted to highlight on that also, there's a big misconception or fugazi out there at the moment about all the commercial lenders giving 100% lend. So this 100% lend thing, great, they'll lend you 100% on the commercial property, but you have to cross-collateralize a resi property in there. I'm seeing a lot of people fall into this trap of putting their owner occupier in with a commercial property, and then it also ties in their business also. You know, so
Really?
yeah, so
That's
that's
trifecta.
the trifecta, right? That's the only way you get the 100% lend, right?
okay.
Let's just simplify that for a second. Very easy. Get your resi, if there's equity in it, draw the equity out, and then do a standalone deal at 90% with another funder. These two deals aren't linked, and your business isn't tied into there. Whereas over 50% of businesses fail, or small businesses fail. Imagine your business fails, you lose the commercial property, you lose your house. Everything falls down.
Why are people walking away from the standard of what they've always done of doing equity release separately and then taking it over? Why are they crossing it?
Because the banks are marketing it this way.
Okay.
And the clients aren't educated enough. And I'm seeing this as a massive problem.
So they're going direct to banks.
They're going direct to banks, or they're going to brokers who are just, you know,
trying to write a deal.
They're trying to write a deal.
I get
They're not thinking about the customer first. It gives me I've seen it been written a few times, and I'm trying to untangle everything for them. I'm like, mate, this is a nightmare. You guys
It's dangerous, man.
It's so dangerous. They take GSA of your business, which is general security agreement. So if things fail there, they take everything.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like the whole train crashes at the same time. So I hate it. But yeah, when they come to me, I'll say, look, do not do it. I get asked this question every day at the moment about the 100%.
Right.
Literally coming up on my desk because every bank out there is advertising it like it's the bee's knees of lending for commercial because it's an easy marketing point. But that's like, I don't know, I just hate that idea of marketing.
Man, it's the way that like so many different brokers have done it for so long, where they've got the ability to cross securitize them. So it's the easiest thing for them to do. It's like, oh yeah, don't even worry, you have to pull a loan out. We just do it like this. And the novice investor, man, I don't know how many times I saw that back in the day of we come in and we're going to try and pull it out, and we can't access equity for because one property grew, the other one didn't, but they use a combined value and combined LVR against it. That's nice. So they're pushing back into that in the commercial space as well.
Yeah.
How do you get out of it if you're in it?
Well, you have to individually then refinance the deals, basically. So you have to refinance the commercial out and then the resi. But your circumstances might change by that point. You might not be able to refinance. So you're literally stuck with this bank until the cows come home. So you got to be very careful. And then all of a sudden you want to go sell your house, right? You want to upgrade. No, you can't. Sorry, sir. Because your commercial property went down in value. Now you've got a big problem. Your life is on hold. You know, so
Hectic.
That's what, people don't see that future. They're just thinking about today. Oh, I really need that commercial property. I've seen people buy some properties and end up in this situation where they just can't do anything.
Yeah.
It's all crossed. There's negative equity in one property now. They're in big trouble.
Yeah. Lifting the hood a little bit and looking behind the scenes, you identified that, like a pretty big dichotomy between what a good broker does and what a bad broker does. And you also highlighted that brokers behind the scenes will talk to the lenders and create a package that works for the borrower. How do you go about doing that?
I think for us, it's, I guess for myself anyway, I would look at every single deal and I think about what would I do in your shoes. I think that's the core difference. I would never give a customer something that I wouldn't do for myself. And I think that's the level of trust you have to build, I guess, or relationship you build with your broker or anyone that's in your team. I think if you don't, if I can't put forward something that I wouldn't do myself every day of the week. And that way, we always know that they're going to get a good outcome. And I like to state all the facts, all of the risks before we go ahead with it.
Yeah. The simple fact as well is like one of the key things of this, and Hung and I are very aligned on that, of wanting to always make sure we're doing the right thing by the clients, right? What I think a lot of people miss or get wrong in this space as well is they focus on just the singular deal, and I just want to clip the ticket, do the deal, move on. But like what a lot of people forget about is for one, the recurring business, but the happy client, and then everything that comes off the back of it as well. So like when Hung works on this stuff and doesn't just clip it and do it quickly and easily, which would be easier for him to push it through and do it like that. Yes, there's more of a workaround with it, but also how do we keep these clients moving forward so they're not getting stuck in their positions too? So it's something we've always been very aligned with on that front. And it's one of those things you need brokers and people on your team that have gone through and done this stuff before. But you can always smell someone that doesn't have that straight moral compass, right? Especially when you just go in, you go, I want to do this. It's like, yep, okay. And one of the easiest things to do to test someone at the moment is go, I heard about this 100% lens.
Yeah.
I heard about this 100%
I can do it. I can do it.
Exactly,
Yeah, no,
man. So you look for it. You know what I mean?
Somebody said it to me. I'm like, mate, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, that's in there. That's it, bro. You go in to you go in, you probing questions like that. You see what the response is, you see what the outcome is, and so often, man, that'll dictate whether someone's aligned on your team.
That's your new broker challenge. You can.
It is. It is a good a test case to see whether someone's on your team or not, or they're just trying to clip the ticket.
Well, they might just not know. Like they just don't think that. Like they're just not educated enough to know.
Yeah, maybe this is the thing about it as well, man. Like you need your team to be. Your team needs to be a level beyond you. You know what I mean? They need to be able to take you to the level you aren't currently at. So if they don't know this stuff, man, again, that's another red flag. And there's a good thing about even pods like this, man. Like people listen to episodes like this, and they start to learn stuff they don't know otherwise about it, and allows you to, you want a better answer, ask a better question. So you listen to this sort of stuff, you start consuming this sort of content, and then allows you to sort of prime up those good questions to make sure your broker's on the same, not even the same level, beyond the level that you're at now, to make sure you don't get stuck.
You mentioned the broker challenge before, so for those who is that what we're calling it?
I don't know.
That what we're going? We'll go with the broker
that's
challenge.
if you're looking for commercial
people
property.
that work with APS.
Is that how I met my broker? How I broke my broker?
Made him cry. You make sure that your clients are serviced by brokers who have their best interests at heart and are actually capable of doing it
100%.
by making sure with these fishing questions that they're actually going to give answers that show that the buyer is in their best interest.
For sure, man. I think like your team they have to be on the same, trajectory or moral compass that you're on, so they can help you get to the trajectory that you're really, really aiming for and shooting for as well. And like the questionnaire, or the broker challenge, whatever it is, it's so important though, because you need someone that's aligned with the way that you're wanting to do things. And also, it has the actual capability to get there and do it as well. That's super, super important. Because someone can be the nicest person in the world, and probably one of the biggest mistakes I see people make out there in the property market is opportunity cost. And the opportunity cost is by staying with the wrong team and the wrong people that are in that team who might be a nice person, but they don't have the capability. All well and good. This is business. If it's business, you have to treat your portfolio like a business. As nice as Sally might be as an accountant and Jim might be as a broker, if they're both mum and dad broker and accountants and small family business or something like that, if that's the way that they operate, like servicing those people or the everyday people who are just clipping a ticket on a deal, like that's not what you're looking for. You're looking for the people that are able to take you to the next level.
100%. And on that note, for people that are looking to move into commercial property that don't really know anything about it, you would have seen thousands of these. People have done it without the support of a BA.
Yes.
Where do you start? What are some of the risks, some of the challenges that you've seen with people that have done this without having that specialist support?
Man, I think it's a mix, because there's also we've seen a lot of deals have been done by BAs who make the transition over and they don't have the correct team behind them. They don't have the correct understanding.
So even BAs themselves.
Oh, dude, 100%.
I'll give you a horror story. I had a guy who inherited a whole stack of money and went to a commercial BA. Obviously, no names here, but bought 2 commercial properties. Right, the guy's only on about $100,000 income, and he was sold the dream that this is going to replace your income over. Obviously inflation, everything else is going to increase the rent, and eventually you can stop working. Guess what happened to the 2 properties at the same time?
No way.
Both went vacant at the same time.
Yeah.
And these were leveraged up lease stock deals, right? And the interest was actually with the 2 vacant properties at the same time. He did not have enough buffers to sustain it.
No way.
Yeah, it came to my desk and I was just like, I don't know how to help you, man. You are some here.
Yeah.
You have to sell them, and he goes, no one will buy them, they're vacant. Like, mate, imagine buying 2 properties or 2 assets and both of them going vacant. You must have really selected some bad assets for both of them to go vacant at the same time. Yeah, like if you had a good commercial property, it should very rarely go vacant. And if it does go vacant, you should be able to find a tenant pretty quickly, or you should be able to sell it within a period to somebody who would need it for their own business or something else. But yeah, that was the biggest shock I've seen. That was about 12 months ago. Yeah. And the outcome was he eventually sold it. I almost declared bankrupt because of it. So why share it, make it a negative twist, but I just...
No, but the thing is, people need to be aware of like what actually happens out there as well, and like whether it's whether there's a big player with too many clients on the books in the commercial space and they just try to clip deals, or whether it's someone that doesn't have any experience and they transition over. I know for us when we transitioned into it, man, it was about an 18-month transition internally when we brought in and built out the team with over 100 years of experience in the commercial sector before we even took it to the public.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we were doing deals internally within the business and myself and everything within that division before it ever got taken to the public. And now we're 18 months past that. So man, it was just like, there has to be, and man, I'm talking about the experience side of things. I'm talking about sales agents, leasing agents, DD experts, valuers, like the whole kit and caboodle, to have all these different checkpoints and valuation points and due diligence checkpoints that it has to get past before a deal ever makes it to the table of a client. Because there are a lot of things that can get missed on a commercial deal. But when something gets missed on a commercial deal, it can be a very, very expensive mistake. So whether that's through another BA that doesn't know what they're doing, or whether that's an individual investor that has no idea what they're doing. And again, in Australia, everyone thinks they know how to buy property, right? Resi is probably the biggest one that everyone just thinks they know how to buy it. But then when they think they make the transition to commercial, they think they can just do a little bit of research or whatever it is, and it's not that hard. There's so many intricate layers to it, especially at the moment when stock is so tight Australia-wide, vacancies so tight Australia-wide, the supporting data is so slim. And when the supporting data is so slim, it's actually very hard to make very educated and calculated decisions. So we build out this like massive data vault of all leases and sales across all these areas, and a lot of them being done off market as well, that we have the data vault on that, which isn't available publicly. And so if you don't have that data vault, or someone else doesn't have their own set of like a very, very deep entrenched data vault in a certain area, how can you make a calculated decision on this stuff? You know, and then a scenario like what Hung has there, and we've had plenty of them, exactly the same thing. Again, same thing, bought through BAs, and man, they go. We've had ones that literally have gotten the settlement, and it was a Fugazi lease. As soon as they've done it, the company wraps up, they exit. All of a sudden, they go settle on this property that's vacant. They've overpaid for it because the lease was inflated to show, let's say, a 6% net, when true lease on that purchase price might have been a 3 or 4%. So the same sort of thing. They can't even exit it because they can't sell it for enough to clear the debt, let alone get a tenant back in there at that amount, because it's not a correct lease. You know, but people, they might see a 3 or a 5 year lease and think, oh, well, that's what it is because newly signed lease, beautiful. But it's like, what's the actual underlying demand at that amount? You know, what is it genuinely there? So, see what, man, I've seen it happen so many times.
I'll probably add to that is that, that Fugazi lease thing.
We're up to 4, maybe 5.
I've had a few, but I've seen it like firsthand on what that looks like. And, you know, Uncle Tony Fugazi signed with his cousin, Tony Spanion or something like that, you know. And they're like,
he's definitely from the Fairfield hood.
Yeah, they're from Fairfield, and they came up with this scheme to sign the lease together, right? And you've seen it. I've seen it in the past. And
so how common is it? Because I know you and I have spoken about this on podcast.
It's so common. It's more common than you think. Like,
this is the thing, man, because like a vacant property is very hard to sell because it's very hard to get finance on, right? So instead of selling it vacant, harder, getting a lower list price, they'll create a and this is the thing, right? Almost all tenants of a commercial property are a business. So they'll set up under a business entity name. What's the easiest thing there is to fold out there? Business. You fold the business, you walk away. You might have a 3-month, you know, director's bond or something like that within it. Even if whether that was paid out or not paid out, whatever it is, even if that was there, if you've inflated the price by $500,000 or $1 million and then walked away with that at the expense of maybe, you know, $15,000 to $20,000 worth of a 3-month bond, that's nothing in comparison. And then you're left holding it with potentially like a significantly different actual genuinely achievable rental amount versus what you paid for as a cap rate and as an actual leasing component.
Which is why you need to do your data and due diligence, look at what comparables in the area are going
huge.
for.
It's huge. But this is where this goes back to your question though, of like what's the biggest mistakes we see, and the biggest issue is there's not enough data out there in the open, literally public databases. There literally is not enough, man. You can't even find vacancy rates of an area, right? You think about resi, you flick you Google it and it comes up immediately. 100%. There's none of that for commercial, none of that. And that's actually the most basic metric you should look at, especially when you're going out there buying even resi. But in commercial, it's so much more important, but it's not available. So that it's so easy to get wrong.
What I tend to see, or like, so everyone thinks of commercial as just a data-driven thing, right? There is obviously the data is really, really important, but the biggest, I think, is the most important thing when you buy a commercial property is looking at the actual tenant. So people don't actually really just look at the tenant, right? Just sit down for a moment, just pause, have a look at the baby bunting that's in there. Let's have a look at the, I don't know, whatever, whoever your tenant might be, right? It might be the local fish and chip shop guy. Go and buy some fish and chips off him. You know, see what their customer service is like. Just the human element of it. Are these guys going to fold at some point? Will they be there forever? You know, is this a tenant that could go 5 by 5 by 5 by forever? You know, so people don't actually think about that sometimes when they're looking at the commercial. Numbers are there, Excel spreadsheets and everything, all good. But did you know your tenant's about to go bankrupt? Is that something that you've even looked at? Have you even just had a look at like their business as what they actually do? So I think that's sometimes the missing element for a lot of guys buying commercial. They're not actually really thinking about the human element.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it's really important.
Have you guys watched the movie The Interview?
Yeah.
With that, when they interview Kim Jong-un. Yeah, bro, that just popped into my head.
Why are you looking at Agent Gordon?
I'd apologise, but I'm not going to.
Wait,
you know the movie, right? And James Franco, and he goes out and he goes into the town, and when they
the
drive
grocery
past
shop.
the grocery shop, and then they walk into it, and it's actually like this cardboard, this picture they painted on the wall that makes it look like it's actually real, and they're happy in there, and there's no one even in there.
It picks up
Like
the plastic orange or something, and it's like not even real.
100, it's not even real, man. That's what you got to think about when you think of a Fugazi lease. Go search that scene, James Franco with grocery store or something.
Like, that's
Funny, that's true, yeah. That's a best analogy, yeah. You're looking at Kim Jong-un.
I mean, the both of you see this every day, right? Like, you guys know all the stories. I can guarantee there are people listening to this who are planning to jump across the commercial, and they will make this mistake. I guarantee there are people listening to this that will find themselves in this.
There's people listening to this who have made this mistake.
And they have made it in the past. Hung, you said earlier when the person came through before with 2 vacancies, like there's not much I can do.
Yeah.
I mean, is that just the end of the story, or is there anything that you can do to get yourself out of it?
Yeah, so it depends on your income level, right? So obviously these are done on lease stocks, which means it's vital there's a lease in order to have a loan.
Yeah.
If there's no lease, there's no loan. So you got to almost protect yourself. You got to know that you've got a backup plan. You've got some buffers. If they had enough income to service a full doc, they could refinance the vacant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That would be okay. But then they still got to support the repayments of a few $1 million on $100,000 salary. Like, can't happen.
Yeah.
So you've obviously got to look at your risk and your risk appetite, and you've got to look at what would happen if you were vacant. All right.
I was going to touch on that, Hug, is like in that scenario that he explained before of an average bloke on a $100,000 salary, he's bought 2 properties at that amount, they've both gone vacant at the same time. In all reality, if anyone ever finds themselves in that situation, you need to figure out a game plan ASAP.
Yeah.
Because in reality, you may need to fire sell at debt level to clear it, which is obviously absolute worst case. But what's the alternative? If you actually can't sell this thing, because commercial can take a bit longer to transact and sell as well. But if it's vacant, you can't sell that thing. The longer that you hold it, the more those repayments absolutely hammer you. If you don't have enough in there, as like Hung said, the guy almost went bankrupt. So it might almost be well, could you sell, and most lease stock loans are 65% LVR, right? Could you sell it at what would be 80% of value, which would still potentially give you 15% of your cash back, or 15% of the value back out as cash, which might allow you to hold the other one? But do you need to potentially fire sell one, to get yourself out of this scenario whilst you hopefully lease the other one? Now you're gonna lose some money in this scenario, but we're talking about what's the game plan out of here? Well, you're in a very tricky situation. Yeah. Obviously, the best game plan is to get them both released. As Hung was saying, that he couldn't release it,
couldn't sell it.
Couldn't release it, couldn't sell it. So it's it's really weighing up the options. And now I'm talking doomsday here, but this is where if someone ever finds themselves in that situation, I actually would strongly recommend reach out to someone who's got really deep experience around commercial, or even a broker around this side of things that's got deep experience around this too, to really help understand what to do in this scenario. Because man, we've seen it happen. I've seen it happen, and there was we talked about a horror story. I think I brought this one up when we were chatting last time. It was a client of ours who had been with a commercial BA before they were with us. I explained this one at the summit last year. They'd bought this property at the start of 2024. We're at the end of 2024, and it had a Fugazi lease on it. As soon as they settled, it was a restaurant. The tenant was out. They'd paid about 6%. I think they paid a 6.5% cap rate. The genuine cap rate on this thing on purchase price was 3.5. So they couldn't lease it. The debt level was too low to sell it. Exactly, man. It was actually worth half what they paid for it. They had to do a drawdown on their house and release equity from the primary residence to use it to pay. And by the time we got to the summit, he held it for 10 months. It was costing him 180 grand in that 10-month time frame to hold it while he was trying to release it. So these are doomsday, these are worst case scenarios, right? But this is where, sometimes the game plan around this thing and how can I potentially reposition myself out of it, it comes very much into the equation. But again, this is why on the way in, you just need so many touch points, you just need to be all over this thing so you don't fall into this situation.
I think there is probably a misconception around there with commercial versus resi. resi will always have some level of underlying value, provided you're in a town where people want to live, right? Maybe if you go in like a super remote community and the town's now 5 people from 1,000, it doesn't have an underlying value to it as much. But if you're in an area where you do have strong owner-occupier demand, there will always be an intrinsic value for that property, not necessarily tied to the yield that you would get from it if you lease it out. But I know that throughout this podcast, both of you have said it before, which is if your yield is half, then the value of the property is half. So the sum of the value of a commercial property it's essentially a function of the yield at the end of the day, which is quite, and I'm going to throw this open to the table, that is quite divergent, it's quite different from resi.
Yeah, 100%. The way that the value a commercial property is based on its net yield. So the way that they determine the price of it is basically determined by the rent you're receiving. So if you're actually got a Fugazi lease, for instance, and you're halving that yield, it's basically worth half its value in essence. There's a lot more layers that obviously go into it. When you look at a valuation report for a commercial property, it's probably up to about 30, 40 pages typically. It can be a lot longer depending on what type of commercial, multiple leases, so many different things. But so it's very tied into the lease. And a lot of things about commercial properties, sometimes I find this funny because it's obviously the valuations are tied into the lease, but for some reason it doesn't inherit sometimes the intrinsic value of the land component, which I see, like that's when you know you're buying a good commercial property when they're saying that your property is valued based on a lease, but you own 2,000 square meters of land, and you're like, holy crap, that's free land. But I've seen a few deals like that, and it's like, that's some good buying.
It can work both ways as well, because one of the interesting components of this and of what we discussed there is the Fugazi lease can obviously work against you. Obviously, in a big way, if you buy something that's got a lease in place that's massively overinflated and it gets missed, or people don't understand the metric points, right, it can massively devalue the asset and property. But on the flip side, this is where we actually sometimes can see quite good value, is if something has been leased, especially for a longer period of time, you might have quite an established tenant there, but they're at a lower rate. The landlord may have not kept it up with market rate over a period of time, especially if there's a good long-term tenant in there. And sometimes what we find is actually quite good value of a repositioning of a lease. Potentially, it could be a 12 to 24 month hold, or it could be at a lower rate. But your cap rate would typically, like what the market actually drives as a demand level and what it would pay, will put it at a certain amount. But you may be at a lower amount because your lease is at a lesser point on purchase. That's a good thing, like being able to go up. As long as you're factoring in the loss of rent during that time frame, but a lot of the time you'll be able to get an actual bit of a windfall and a bit of a, especially with people with lease stock loans, because they're harder to get because it's, you know what I mean? Because the lease is lower than what it should be, it can actually quite hard to get it through. There can be opportunity around that for actual uplift on the back end of that lease when you reposition it back to the market, either with current tenant or especially if it's in a high demand area, if you went back to market. Obviously, as always, if you can retain current tenant, perfect, and get them up to market rent or closer to it. But sometimes we see a really good little uplift opportunity with that as well, on almost the reverse, looking for something that is at the lower amount, especially if you can carry it that little bit longer. And then obviously on the release and the reposition in 6, 12, 24 months windows. I bought assets like that for sure, even personally.
That's my favorite transaction I see in the commercial space. People are buying things that are, they're not renting at market rate. And if they're in a good position for some of these clients, they tend to be able to get a full doc commercial loan, which at the moment I'm doing up to 90% with a 30-year loan term, 10 years interest only, at a low 6% rate on that. So I've done I've been using this product left, right, and center. This is my go-to thing. If you can afford the serviceability and go down the full doc route, this is a perfect deal. So you get something that is way under market rent. You take a full doc loan, 90%, 10 years interest only. And, whether when the lease expires or, whether you renegotiate, whatever happens, you completely uplift the value and the rent. And, it's such a good product to use in conjunction with that.
100%.
Yeah.
Now, looking at this, a lot of people would be considering the impacts that it would have on their passive income. Gross yield in resi versus net yield in commercial, how much difference is there? Well,
oh, substantial. Yeah. That's substantial.
It's like a non-conversation.
Yeah.
Like a gross versus a net.
The quick run through is that, in the commercial space, it depends on what type of commercial, different things offer different ways for your tenant to pay for every single cost, right? Including land tax. In some circumstances you can't, but it depends on the actual asset itself. So, but generally speaking, pretty much most of the outgoings can be paid by your tenant. Versus when you buy a resi property, you're going to have to pay council, water, insurance, strata, whatever it is, depending, and all of that lines up, land tax. In commercial space, you can even pass the land tax onto your tenant. Not in all cases, but in most cases.
This is where like a lot of people kind of get this thing wrong as well. They might see like a 6%, they see a 6% yield and they presume they're the same thing. But 6% net in commercial versus a 6% gross in resi, typically your net costs involved with residential property might drop your net yield actually down to 3%.
Yeah.
If you have a 5 or a 6% gross, you might be sitting at a 2.5 to 3% net return. And it will really depend on the area you're in as well, because you might be in an area with higher land tax, you might be in an area with higher insurances, council rates, all that sort of thing as well. So if you're in an area highly exposed to that, now remember, in commercial, we pass all these costs on to the tenant, whereas in residential, you're carrying the cost of that asset. So it's one of those things, and why I'm a massive believer in, people talk about, paying down residential properties over time. I don't believe in that at all. Like, residential properties are in the portfolio to produce excellent capital growth. Once they've done their thing, and you move them on, you acquire super high yielding assets. Now, there are times, and I've had times, and I've got a lot of residential cash flow deals in my portfolio. One's the same, but like, when it comes down to it, is the time for that right now isn't there. And it will come back again at some point in the future. But for right now, and I'm talking like you do accelerated plays, you might buy unit blocks, duplexes, house and grannies, things like that, do accelerated strategies on them to get higher than average returns. But again, you might be trying to achieve an 8 to 9% gross yield to net out at 6%. Whereas in commercial, a lot of the time you can walk in there, and depending on the quality of the asset, and the grade of the asset and what the actual industry is as well, you could be sitting anywhere between a 5.5 to 6.5% net return with longer leases and everything in play as well, and just bang, straight off the bat, have that, rather than, again, even needing to do accelerated strategies as well.
I'll probably add a note to that also, is that people are always looking at commercial properties and only looking at today's lease and today's net rent, right? Depending on what's in the lease itself, you're generally increasing by inflation, or CPI. So as you're stacking rents, every year your rent is going up. Typically it's like 3%. I think lately it's been a lot more. But every year that rent's stacking, right? Whereas in the resi space, we're almost in cycles of rent. It peaks, troughs, back, up, down, depending on supply. Whereas the commercial rents, if you're buying a good commercial asset, typically it just keeps trickling up, and the value keeps trickling up. So at some point, what was a 6% yield, I think it's over 12-year span or something, that becomes a 12% yield off your initial purchase price. Even if you paid not a cent off it and your interest rate is 6%, and you haven't paid a cent off in 12 years' time, it's still 6%, you're now making 6% net on top of your loan.
For sure.
So that's where the passive income play comes.
One of the really cool things I had was I had a few deals when we had the circa 8% inflation numbers.
Oh, yeah.
So I had a few that they came up for market renewals right at the same time, which just before the print. And then the renewal came up just after the print. The print came out at 8%, whatever it was, and then bang, rates and values obviously increasing by that amount in an immediate hit. So there's definitely pros to sitting in this space for sure.
Oh yeah.
So I think there's one thing that we haven't touched on, which is quite important. Sam, over to you. How do you actually pick a good commercial investment? What are some of the data points? Kind of lightly touched on it before, that you need to look out for. Whenever you read the news, you read that, I don't know, office spaces in Melbourne have plummeted. Too many examples of this.
Yeah.
Everyone walks down their high street, they see retail shops that have been vacant for what seems like years. How do you pick a good commercial property?
Man, the fundamentals always come down to, like, what do you actually need in your portfolio? So for so many clients these days, like, if we're still in heavy accumulation phase in a portfolio, like we spoke about at the very start, like, people look to put them in at the start. You don't put them in at the start. You might put them in, let's say, halfway through an acquisition journey to keep cash flow strong in the portfolio so you can keep moving. And then you also might inject them at the very end. And there's also the self-managed super fund or the super fund route that you can go down as well. But man, like, what asset you need in your portfolio at what time will dictate, in my opinion, what we go out there and hunt. So earlier in the journey, we might go something that's slightly higher risk, but also slightly higher return and a higher reward, right? Because we need it potentially for serviceability and for cash flow during the accumulation phase. So we might go down the avenue of something, again, like touching on that side, something that carries that slightly higher risk. But the thing is, even when it's slightly higher risk, we still want to make sure it's a bulletproof asset. Yeah. And so, man, so we might go down that avenue earlier in the journey. And that might be, this is the interesting thing, because you talk about, say, office space, and people talk about retail and all the rest of the sort of thing. It all depends where you are.
Yeah, it's not even across the country.
Exactly, man. And so, like, I remember, man, when I used to live down in the Southern Highlands going back 10 years ago, mate, you walk down the main street of, I lived in Mossvale for many years, and half the street would be empty, and it had been empty for a decade. And then within a 2-year window, the area had gone through complete gentrification. Every shop front was packed, rents were going through the roof, and man, people couldn't get an actual shop. So you also need to understand what's happening in an area. Is it gentrifying? Is there money? Is there wealth coming down and moving to those areas as well? And then really understanding that. So from a retail and office, has there been a demand shift in a certain area or a certain region? Has it been pumped with people moving into an area that now, or again, COVID, a lot of people moved, work from home, and now a lot of office spaces come back in, or people going back to the office as well. And then, man, so it really all depends on the industry. And like industrial has had huge hype for a long time, but that definitely, we've seen that definitely coming off the boil. Like a lot of people out there in the commercial game know that industrial has come off the boil. It's not a bad thing, man, to have things go back to more of a status quo. Because for me, commercial is about cash flows. Like, yes, we obviously want to generate capital growth over time. We want the rents as a minimum to be increasing with CPI or above. So we want demand to still be there. But mate, I want in the portfolio to produce cash flow. I focus on the residential to give us the gains and to give us very strong capital growth. And then I pump it back into the commercial, and on the back end, I'll pump it into pay down as well on those commercial assets too. So there's no right or wrong answer with that. And when it comes to selecting, you need to understand what you need in your portfolio now. Is it something with a higher return, with slightly higher risk now in the accumulation phase that you need to pump cash flow in there? Or are we on the back end, or are we talking super, where we might go something that's maybe a little bit more blue chip, a little bit more bulletproof, but also a little bit lower on the yield side too? So you need to understand what it is you need in your portfolio, what your risk profile is, what yield you need in there as well, what your budget is. And then that'll allow you to then drill down on location as to where it really makes sense for it. It allows you to drill down on asset type and location, and then you can really pick from there. There's no direct answer around this because there's so many variables, as there is when it comes to building a portfolio for any property type.
I mean, your retail space market in Brisbane during COVID was completely different to Melbourne, so you can't look at it as one.
Yeah, 100%.
We've spoken almost exclusively about yields, but we also haven't really dived into the capital growth that you can see in commercial property. Take us through that. Well, what are we seeing at the moment?
Yeah, man. I mean, again, it's very much varied across the board, across different industries. We're definitely seeing an uplift in some asset types in some regions as well. That being said, it has cooled off compared to a certain run that I went through during COVID. And again, there was a stall period of building during COVID as well, where a lot of people couldn't spend money overseas, so a lot got concentrated and consolidated into Australia also. But man, there's a lot of like really cool like accelerated capital growth plays you can sort of do within the portfolio as well. I've got a few warehouses that I've bought. Either with mezzes or with unapproved mezzes or no mezzanines at all. And you can go through, as long as you understand the code and you've got the correct car parking spaces, all that sort of
thing.
So
you can essentially double your floor space.
To an extent. But it's always an understanding as well. Like people think, well, you can double your floor space. Well, not exactly, because a lot of the time you can only do potentially 30% or 50% or 70% coverage of total GFA. And so like if that's the consideration, and then also your mezzanine's always going to be worth less than your ground level as well. So it's really understanding the components of it, and is it worth going through and building it? Which a lot of the time it is, but it's how much can you actually get approved, how much can I actually lease it for, and then what's actually going to cost me as well. But man, like that sometimes combined with things like signage, different little things. There's always different little things you can add on to it, but a lot of the time it's exactly as Hul and I were talking about before. It's understanding what leases are genuinely at, and are there availabilities of uplifts literally just directly around that as well, of understanding a lease being under market, under rented, and being able to bring it back up.
One thing a lot of people are looking into at the moment, and we hear a lot of questions have been coming through about it, is in terms of buying through a self-managed super fund. Why should people consider, again, I'll throw this open to the floor, why should people consider commercial for their SMSF, and when's the right time?
Probably on my side, the most common thing I see is somebody who operates a business, and they might be operating from a warehouse.
Because you can buy it and then lease it at the market rate. Yeah,
correct. So a lot of people come to me saying, I'm working here, we're operating from here, and it's come up for sale. This is a very typical scenario I see. And that makes sense, because now you actually gain complete control for your business, right? Because if your lease expires and your landlord goes, hey, well, wait a second, I want that back, or I'm going to go and sell it to someone else who might want it as an occupier, you're in trouble. You've got to move your whole premises in your life, all right? So that gives you total control over your business, especially for someone in manufacturing, that needs a warehouse or something like that, anything that would suit their business, right? So that's probably the most common thing that I would see. Other reasons is obviously for cash flow. As Sam said before, it's people are looking for an SMSF play so that they can get future cash flow because they want that passive income and tax-free in the retirement phase. So that's what I'm typically seeing for commercial and SMSF on my end. Maybe I'll follow to Sam to see what he thinks about that as well.
Yeah, man, I think it's a bit of a mix because I think some people can do it a little bit too early in there as well, and they they might have a couple 100,000 and they go park it in one smaller commercial asset. My biggest issue with that is, and we see it happen a lot of people, they'll go to a buyer's agent, the buyer's agent goes, oh, well, you've got 300,000 in there, let's go buy one commercial asset with it, but they're 30 or 40 and they've still got 20, 30 years until they get to retirement age. And so when I look at that, I'm like, I think it's a waste of capital at that point in time. I think holding commercial at the back end, especially when you get to retirement phase, is an excellent idea. You got no tax rates in there, and it's a very, very strong vehicle from a tax perspective to hold assets in there long term. And I love it. I look at it as a dual portfolio, a secondary portfolio, something else you can build on the side to be able to have ownership of and take advantage of in a 10, 20, 30, 40-year window, depending on your age. But I see too many people go into it. It's exactly the same conversation the whole way through this thing. It feels like of going in there way too early, way too soon. I think you can make considerably more money in a shorter period of time through resi, and then funnel it into commercial when the time's right, and acquire a larger asset when the time's right in there with a bigger deposit.
So those fundamentals still remain.
The same fundamentals.
Always, man.
It's just like a second portfolio, like Sam said. I'll probably just highlight one thing there is that, so let's say we're going back to loan to value ratios. So you need to put more deposit in for that commercial. So as he said, if you had 300,000 there, in SMSF, resi lenders will allow you to lend up to say 90%, right? You could spread that amongst 3 different assets. So your exposure might be, let's call it $2 million for $1.5 million, something like that. Whereas if you load that all into a commercial and you only borrow 65%, you're only really exposed to a much lower asset.
So like buying an $800,000 property or something like that at that amount.
Yeah. So having exposure, and if they're growing and if the resi prop, let's just say that they're growing at the same rate for value, then being exposed to 1.5 million versus 850 grand, if you're getting, let's argue 10% on that, you're making much more in that shorter time.
Is it true, a little bit of a pivot, that you don't have to pay stamp duty on commercial properties?
Yeah, so you do have to pay stamp duty, but in some states, there are some special rules. I think a couple of them got introduced. I know the ACT, I think it's up to don't quote me this, but I think it's up to 1.9 million. They introduced that a little while back to get, I guess, people interested in buying the commercial spaces. But that being said, it's almost like that's built into the price also. So then what you tend to see is that the yields are a bit lower because there is no barrier to entry, right? So, it's all well and good because less capital in, but might not be the best outcome for you because you're chasing these lower end or, properties that might not suit your portfolio. So it's really, I think the important thing is understanding what you actually need and don't go buy something based on stamp duty being exempt.
It's what we talk about a lot with government grants, that if you get a government grant, you end up just baking it into the price of the overall asset. What type of commercial property, Sam, at the moment are you seeing good value in?
Man, I think it's a funny question because it goes back to the same sort of thing we were talking about before. It all depends on the area.
Just depends.
So, man, we buy in every different sector of the marketplace. We're literally buying at the moment, but it'll be very region specific. So where industrial might be really strong in one location, it might be weakening off and dying off in another, where we might be waiting and holding and waiting for the bottom, or where we perceive the bottom before we start buying there as well. There's some retail precincts that are going off their head, and we're getting excellent, 3 and 5 year leases, right? Re-signs of tenants that have been there for 10 to 15 years, and getting really, really strong returns on assets like that as well in booming, economic, very vibrantly economic regions. And then there's some, again, man, turning to office too. There's some office space regions that are coming on the absolute boil that were sitting at 30% vacancy 5 years ago, and every year they're dropping by 5% a year, and now they're sitting at very, very tight vacancies, and you can't rebuild the asset for what it's worth. So it's literally below replacement cost. So there's value within those, and then obviously things like your medical and your specialized and things like that too. I mean, there's some great value in some assets like that, but they're obviously typically at a different price point. But yeah, man, like this is where it's like across the board. It's the same as resi, man. Like there's opportunities in resi always in different areas. It's the same as commercial. In every industry, man, in every different industry, there's there's assets and opportunities in all of them. It just depends on the market and again the economic vibrancy of that area for that specific asset.
Yeah. What are you seeing?
Oh, look, you know how this whole conversation came about was actually when a lot of the commercial deals from Sam started coming on my desk, and back to the original episode, I was like, I'd buy that. And inside, I won't share too much of his secrets in a sense, but I mean, like inside I guess when APS acquire property, there's a detailed write-up with all of the data sets, and the commercial ones are a lot longer than the resi ones. I live and breathe this stuff, so whenever I get one sent through, I ask the team, send it through to me.
So anything with like Australian properties,
any property, I'll again send it through. So I have the full read-up, and the team at APS are very detailed about the reasoning why they're buying that property. So for instance, if it's warehousing, there's plans in the government to spend a lot of money to allow for a lot more freight to come through this area, for instance. So you can see the justifications along the way, and it's pretty much to Sam's point. There's opportunity in all aspects of commercial at the moment. You just got to be at the right place, the right time, and you got to know what's on the horizon. That's the main thing.
How many people are coming through at the moment that you're like, ooh, don't touch that?
I had one yesterday. like really, oh man.
Well, to be clear, this is going out at a very different time than when we're recording it. Do you want to anonymize?
Oh no, yeah. So I had
this one, maybe generally.
So I had a guy who wanted to buy like these whole bunch of Central Coast retail places that were like little mum and dad shops. And I'm like, why do you want to buy it? And I kept looking at it and I go, what is driving that right now? And he's like, it's we live around the corner, and that kind of. I'm like, I kept looking at it. I'm going, what are you buying here? Like, I couldn't figure it out. I was like, no matter how I looked at it, I'm like, man, I don't know if I like this. I have to give people an honest opinion and just say, man, look, like, why are you buying it? Like their opinion is the fact that I get them to question themselves, and then what? And I'm like, what are you trying to achieve? Well, we want to have passive income when we retire. Well, this is not it. There's so many other opportunities out there that are better than this opportunity right now. But you're just buying this because it's got a bit of a passion project that you can go and maybe mow the lawns when you're 70 and and add value that way. I don't know.
One of the biggest things we see, man, is like people they make a mistake. Buying based on emotion, right? And it's just like it's one of those things. It's almost the guaranteed way to lose money or to fail in the game of real estate, man. Is letting emotions come into play and buying in your own backyard. Oh, I could see myself mowing the lawns on this thing every once a month. It's just like. Yeah, it's got to be, it's pure facts and figures, you know what I mean? Especially when it comes to commercial, it's even that on steroids, you know what I mean? It's another level of that, of it just being, it needs to be numbers based, like what's actually happening in the economy in that area, well, like greater as well, like especially nationally, but then especially down to the LGA and the suburb level too, what's actually going on there. That's going to keep driving this asset and continue to have it in demand as well. There's just so many different factors and factors to overlay on this thing, but man, when you let emotions come into it at all, like, expect to be burnt if you let emotions come into play, especially when it comes to commercial. It is not a forgiving asset, yeah? So like in Australia, residential property over the last 5 to 10 years has been a pretty forgiving asset. You could have bought something pretty you probably still would have done all right. Right? Commercial is not forgiving like that. You buy in an area it's like, it doesn't just go up in value because everywhere seemed to go up in value in a lot of places, especially during COVID. Man, if there's no demand there, no business to rent it. It's not like people just move in because they need a house. You're going to struggle with it, man. So it's one of these things you can't let emotions come into play, and it has to be purely numbers, facts driven. Always, man, always.
From the APS perspective, your methodology does give an avenue, give that pathway for people once they've built up that resi portfolio to move into commercial, to support that passive income, that cash flow. What do you say to people that, they might be a bit hesitant because they haven't had the background with it, they haven't had the exposure to it, and they go back to that really reductive argument like we were talking about before, which is, I walk down my main road and I just see a lot of retail stores empty. What do you say to people? Is there a future in property investing without having commercial in the mix?
Man, I definitely think at some point in the next few years, I don't know if it'll be the next few years, but there'll be some point in the future that residential does make sense again. But in all reality, man, like we're a long way away from that. And like if you need commercial in if you need cash flow in your portfolio now, commercial is the answer. And so, again, that person walking down the street going, oh, well, there's all these retail shops empty. It's like, okay, well, that's not where we're buying. Okay, so you need to eliminate that from your mindset. It's like, are we buying your residential properties in your backyard as well? As like, more than likely 99% chance, no, we're not buying anywhere near you. So, people need to get that out of their heads. We don't really come up against that because so many of our clients we've been working with for years, right? And so they've seen the results and they've had their little hesitations with us before in the past. And then they see the results, man, and they back it and they refi the equity, they buy again. And all of a sudden it's like, well, hang on, what they said worked. And what we found, again, 9 times out of 10 is clients back us with it when it comes to the commercial side as well. They know I've been through it, man. I live, I breathe it, I buy a lot myself. And have been doing so for many years, and that's the walking the talk that they get to experience and go through themselves too, man. So we don't have too much of it because I think like one of the other big things that we're all about is educating our clients and making sure they're understanding what they need in the portfolio next and why. And if that's what they need in the portfolio next, we explain it, we break it down, we show the numbers around why, especially from the broker side as well. They show the numbers in terms of why they might need at that point, especially even floating portfolios. If they've owned a certain amount, they might consolidate, roll into something like that with cash deposits. Man, it can completely game change a portfolio, And so I think about one of my mentoring clients, or as a young couple that I had on stage at the boot camp around about 3 weeks ago, whatever it was. And Caitlin, the partner, she was so nervous about doing it, and she was like, "Oh, I don't know, Sammy."
Is it commercial?
Early.
That's what I was thinking. Because I'm trying to talk my wife.
Well, dude, they bought three or four resis, and it was time to transition into commercial. And she was so nervous, and then she got up there and said on stage, and she hadn't said it to me yet.
Yeah.
And she's like, she was like, I haven't said this to you because I wanted to save it because she knew I wanted to, like, I was going to interview them on stage, Nathan and Caitlin, and she's like, that's actually my favorite property.
Oh, no way.
And she's like, it's my favorite property because that one asset covers all the cash flow of these 4.
Yeah.
And I have no headaches. I never hear about it. I just see I see the money drop in the bank every month, and I see it eliminate the negative cash flow of the 4 growth assets that are in there doing their thing.
Yeah.
And so she's like, it makes sense now.
Yeah.
Like, I understand why we put in the portfolio. And like all the concerns I had are appeased because of what it's producing, which is what you said it was going to produce. So, man, I think like when people go through that, and sometimes you need to, especially if you're working with people that are guiding you through the process and assisting you, especially if they've done what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Man, if they are helping you with this stuff and they are saying the next thing you need in your portfolio to keep moving forward or to not go under with too much negative cash flow is something like this, or it's the right time to inject it because of how close you're getting to final consolidation, man, you've got to trust the team that's around you if you're selecting that team and they're who you're effectively placing the journey in their hands.
No, 100%. Now, end of the year,
Yes.
wrapping up 2025.
Yeah.
Gents, horizons, what are your plans for 2026? Well, you've had some pretty substantial growth this year.
Yeah, well, we've got our Christmas party this Friday to celebrate the biggest year of all time, and it seems like every month we're breaking a record, which is amazing. The team's done a brilliant job this year. Everyone's a little bit burnt out because we
Can't say burnt out. That's an HR problem.
Oh, no, look, we are open. We have been working so hard behind the scenes. Yeah. Hello, HR. So, no, we've been working really hard, so everyone deserves a bit of a break at this point, but I reckon we're going to keep running until pretty much Christmas, and then I reckon a lot of the guys are going to restart on the 15th, not even.
Yeah.
So we just got too much brewing at the moment, and everyone's out there buying, and there's a lot of changes in the lending space, which means we have to adapt. We're a team that adapts very fast, whereas a lot of guys might be out there just doing what they did and just, it's too hard. Yeah. We're planning ahead for what's happening. We've been looking at all the changes and go, well, where are we placing our deals? How are we going to make this work? So,
which is what you want in a broker. You know, the policy changes.
You got to know.
I think as we've determined on this potty, there are a lot of brokers out there that just want to tick and flit.
Yeah, 100%. We've got to be ready for next year. So I think it's going to be a big year ahead for us.
APS, what's the news?
Man, there's heaps cooking up. We obviously launched a mentoring program. That was at the boot camp. So there's a lot of clients that we're going to be hand-holding through a different level of growth next year. It's going to blow the absolute doors off what anyone's ever done before. So, man, I'm really excited with that.
That is a big call.
That's a big call, man.
Big call.
Like,
you heard it here first.
We know. I've seen it behind the scenes.
Yeah.
It's big.
Yeah, it's huge, man. It's literally huge. So that's super exciting for us, man. And then I've got a bunch of other things I'm sort of working. I've always got things. I'm always the mad scientist cooking up in the background. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that's coming through for next year.
Yeah, nice.
A lot of projects we're working on, a lot of deliverables, and again, like what I always look at is like what especially specifically like what do APS clients need next. What's going to serve a purpose for them to be able to achieve higher and better results. And again, we look at the conversation we're having today, which is around commercial. And for us, like, man, I foresaw that about 2.5, 3 years ago. I could see the yield compression incoming and the different markets that we're going to be moving into for residential, and knowing we either couldn't do the plays we used to do in those states, or the yields just weren't going to be there. So when we overlaid those things on it, I saw it all those literally those years ago that I would need to pivot into something else for a cash flow perspective, and that for us was commercial, which we launched properly nearly going on 2 years ago now. And it's one of these things, man. I'm always just looking at like, what are APS clients going to be needing next? And the cool thing is, like, it aligns very much with what I need next in my portfolio. I won't be afraid to say I'm a selfish investor. Like, I'm always looking for things that are gonna solve my needs, because I know they're also gonna solve the needs of my clients as well. And so that's a beautiful thing, man. That I also get to get deeply entrenched in it and learn as much as I can about it and apply it to my own portfolio, which then I get to apply to all the clients' portfolios as well. So there's a few different things, even on a different level, a different scale, I'm cooking up for next year. That's really exciting, man. So it's a funny thing. I won Australian Entrepreneur of the Year last weekend. It's got nothing. What I've done in the last couple of years got nothing compared to what.
So we're expecting 2 years back to that,
mate. If I don't, it'd be surprising, considering literally I'm not mucking around with this thing. Like, what I got cooking up for next year, like. There's a lot of APS clients that are going to have some absolutely ridiculous wins. We're going to mission, bro. We've got 5 years. Like we're almost, what are we? We're December 10th-ish or something like that. In 2025, I've got 5 years into the summit in 2030.
Yeah, and this is retiring 500 people.
500 people by 2030. So on that stage, it'll be say December 2030. I've got 500 investors to get on the stage.
Hung, are you going to be on the stage?
Yeah, we'll be. Hung's already retired. This is a passion. It's just a passion for that. I think this is the cool thing, is like everything that I do and everything that we build within APS is for that one purpose. Because we know we build something that allows more people to get there, more people to move more quickly, more people to get those results more quickly, and not in a dangerous way, just in a more seamless way, and in a more succinct way. Everyone's like, you got these dinosaurs that are still doing the same things they were doing 30 years ago. It's like, mate, that thing was broken 30 years ago, let alone today. It's like, how do we innovate? What new things can we bring to the table that will literally change the way the game is played and win so much sooner than anyone else has done it before? And so, man, I'm on a mission, bro. And like, this is very, very close to my heart to achieve this thing. So everything we're doing, man, is moving everyone towards that goal. So it's an exciting time moving into next year. And it's a funny thing to reflect on. I don't know if you boys are like, just before we wrap, I don't know, you boys are a little bit superstitious or anything like that? Or you believe in like the star signs and
Well, I mean, it depends to what extent. I feel like you're about to say something really superstitious.
I am. It's not really superstitious, right? So they reckon that like life cycles, it depends. Your life cycle works on a 7-year cycle, right? So it's 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42. You go through different stages of your life. Yeah. I'm 35 now. I've just gone through one of the biggest, most transitionary years of my life. And when I look back 7 years ago, when I was 27 to 28, I went through one as well. Stopped playing soccer, which had been my life to that point. I stopped working on the farm, which I'd been doing for 13 years. There's all these different things. I broke up with a girlfriend that I've been with for 7 years as well. Funny timing on that. And then rolled into starting APS, right? 7 years ago, 7 years in January. This year, so many different changes as well. Like so many crazy changes as well. And what also that perfectly falls in line with is they also say there's this 9-year cycle, not so much a life cycle, there's a 9-year cycle. So 7-year life cycles. And if you boys think about it, it's actually, you probably think of things that happen to you around 27, 28, 20, 21, all these different changes that you go through in different times in your life. And I didn't believe in this stuff until the year that I just went through. And they also say that the actual life cycle happens in a 9-year cycle. So you have a 7-year life cycle, and there's something about some 9-year cycle that happens as well, right? I don't know what the hell the other one's called.
There's a 9-year cycle too.
The 9th year of the cycle is the year of the snake.
Yeah.
The first year is the year of the horse, the start, starting. Yeah. We're just about to finish the 9th year, the year of the snake. And it's funny because I've never believed in this. And then I look at this year, my 7th year at 35, the amount of changes I went through this year, the amount of growth I went through this year, the person who I was 12 months ago compared to now, completely different human being. When I also overlay on top of that, this 9-year cycle thing of the year of the snake, and I look at all the people that tried to burn me this year or did burn me this year, and the cool thing is, but man, the lessons that I took away from that. Yeah. And the crazy thing is, mate, they'll all get left in the dust. It is what it is. They were hanging on to coattails. They'll be stuck where they're stuck. All the rest of it, I don't care, right? But the cool thing is, the year of the snake, man, is the venom, the poison, the people that were like leeching onto you, man, gone, right? And so many people sent me this, knowing what I'd gone through this year, right? Yeah. And so many people had said exactly the same thing. I know Hung's gone through some we all go through right? But this seemed to be the year that so many people went through that transition. The year, and I've never been like this, right? And then the year of the snake, you see, and then the next year, man, and what we're moving into, I'm so excited. I'm genuinely so excited about what's to come, and it's beautiful because we've got our 5-year run until the summit in 2030, and man, I just feel like I got a new lease on life. Like it's been a very, very interesting year. It's a funny way to round up this sort of podcast that we're talking about now, but those two cycles sort of intertwining in the craziest year I've ever had in my life, hopefully setting me up for what I believe will be the biggest and start of the next biggest run I've ever had in my life as well. So I don't know, man. You asked one little question that's interesting.
I don't really know how to follow this.
It went very deep.
We did, but it's funny you say that because I used to always say to people, and this is before you even thought about that. I say every 7 years something has to change up. I used to say this all the time.
Bro, 7-year life cycle is genuinely a thing, man.
Genuinely used to say this, like you get bored of doing the same thing after every 7 years. Something has to change up.
It's a 7-year itch as well, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, it's like an itch. Like, it could be a house,
like physiological,
could be a job.
Kind of thing.
I noticed like my business changed I went from franchising to going off on our own. Went to the new level, get a new house. There's so many different things that every 7 years I notice, and I'm at that 7-year window. So like things, and this is a lot of transformation. Obviously, jumping on these potties, changing what I do in the business. No longer the technician as such, but I'm still partially involved. So a lot changed, but I'm with you with that as well.
But I think it's funny, man, because it sounds like it's a bit of a, we say this again, but a bit of a fugazi with all this sort of stuff. But man, it's actually true, and I bet you there's so many people listening to this right now that have had a hectic year.
And they're working.
They've had a hectic year, and they think about that 7-year life cycle. It's genuinely a thing. So it's I had it explained to me probably a lot more succinctly than I put it. But when I overlay it with the year that I've had and what we're moving into, man, it's just exciting times. I'm actually pumped for what's to come.
But watch this space, because there's a lot to come out of APS. But gents, I think that is all we have time for today. Sam Gordon, APS, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Hung, the best co-host in the world.
Thanks for having me, mate.
And that is all we have time for today on How I Met My Broker. If you want to reach out to Sam or Hung, you can reach out to them direct. They're pretty. You guys are pretty responsive all the time.
Yeah, you can find us.
Find them online or reach out to me. That's
socials, email. People find us
on Friday.
Oh, it's a secret.
That's actually a secret.
It's actually a secret.
It's a secret.
None of my staff know.
Yeah,
nobody knows.
Coming out after it.
No,
I want to gate crash
it. It is coming out afterwards. It is coming out afterwards.
It's coming out after.
I can say it. Yeah. So we booked out the Sydney Aquarium.
Oh, no way.
Private dinner and dance off.
Really? Dance off.
Yeah.
Dance off. What's that bit out?
What's your dancing for?
Mate, I don't know. I'm going to dance to some Justin Bieber or something. No,
that's classic.
But you know a lot of Justin Bieber songs, mate.
Mate, I'm all over it, man.
Really?
I'm a believer. No.
Believer. That's good. That's the first time.
What a note to wrap.
Anyway, that's all we have time for today. We'll be back next year, early next year. But until then, bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.